The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you, and it must be Friday. And indeed it is. We're coming at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park studios of Money Radio, 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web, moneyradio1510.com. And if this is the first time you're tuning into the show, our show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. And how do they do that? They do that by listening to the show. And it's not so much listening to me, it's listening to the guests that I am fortunate to bring onto the show. And if you have never listened to our show before and you want to catch some of the previous episodes, I was just talking to the team here, and I think we've done close to 450 shows in 9 years. You can catch them up on cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button. Third button down is radio show, and you can catch this show and many, many more. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest here today. Stephanie Bucklin is here in the studio. She is the owner of Stephanie Bucklin Consulting. They're a business consulting service firm, and she does event planning and production. And I understand she does a little bit around wellness. So, Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob. It's great to be here.
It's good to have you here on the show, and it's good to meet you. And I know that we talked just briefly. I always like to ask our guests to tell a little bit about them. So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you about where you're from, how you got into this business, where you went to school, what's your favorite color, do you have pets? I mean, you name it. The mic is yours.
Awesome. Well, let's see. I grew up in California. I'm a Southern California girl that has moved to Arizona to basically grow my empire.
Did you go to school here?
I did. I attended ASU, focused on nutrition science, which is my absolute passion. I love plant-based nutrition.
Nice.
And the ideas that are around plant-based nutrition that can help heal people.
And I imagine that you not only profess that, but you practice it as well.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And tell me a little bit about, so you're here. How many years you've been here?
I moved back to Arizona in 2019, so it's been about 4 years.
About 4 years. And you have this company, Stephanie Bucklin Consulting. And I kicked it off by talking a little bit about the consulting services and event planning, but I want to do a deeper dive into the wellness piece. And you talked about, plant-based. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing.
Well, I started doing wellness coaching in 2012 and really just focused a lot on helping people become more plant-based, more focused on their diet and exercise, and really just focusing on healing. Because there's so much you can do with plant-based food and nutrition and superfoods, all these wonderful things that really just make a difference in your body that can move you forward in almost any illness, which is absolutely amazing.
let's do a deeper dive into that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because obviously you talk about this, and I don't live a plant-based diet, but I'm open to new ideas. So tell me a little bit about what it does for you.
Well, nutrition is very powerful in our bodies. We need all of the different types of nutrition, and having a plant-based diet, it gives you every single nutrient that you possibly need. In addition, bringing more fruits and vegetables into your body actually cleanses toxins out of your body. So we encounter toxins everywhere,
right?
In our food, our water, our health and beauty products, and the power of food, especially the superfoods. So that would be the nutrient dense foods like spinach and broccoli. And there are so many of them that can actually get rid of those toxins and move things out. So that's one of the benefits of the plant-based diet. But then there are now scientific studies about whole food plant-based diets removing illness like diabetes or heart disease. It's pretty powerful.
No, that is very powerful. So, let's talk a little bit about the plant-based diet. So you're talking about various vegetables and stuff. Cooking versus eating it raw.
You could do either.
Okay.
Personally, I do 50% raw, 50% cooked in my diet.
Okay, and I know I've heard people say that when you cook it, you cook a lot of the nutrients out. So, is that? There's some truth to that. Actually, when you cook something, it changes the chemistry of the food. Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when you cook something, it releases something that you didn't have access to when it was raw.
Right.
Other times, if you eat it raw, you get more of the nutrients than you would cooked. So it really just depends on the food we're talking about. So one example is broccoli. When you open a bag of broccoli or container, whatever, of broccoli, in that nutrient density, there is so much in there, but when you cut it, it actually releases additional nutrients.
No.
So you're actually supposed to
Wow.
cut broccoli and any of the cruciferous vegetables before you cook them or before you eat them about half an hour, because that will release those extra cancer-fighting nutrients.
Wow. No, that's very, very interesting. I did not know that. But I also want to ask you the question about organic versus regular. So, I've had physicians, I've had research docs on here. I've had so many people on our show that we've gotten into food, and we've talked about food because food is a source of energy, and that is really what fuels our bodies, and we have to really be mindful of those things that we're taking in. And I've had a physician talk about the fact that, just because it says organic doesn't mean it is. And he said a great example is if you buy a tomato and it's not rotting in 2 days, 3 days, then it's not organic. So I'd love to get your take on organic versus, regular fruits and vegetables.
Sure. Well, I can really just give you my own personal experience with organic versus conventional. If I eat foods with pesticides or herbicides on them, I have a reaction in my body.
You can feel it.
I can feel it
Wow.
almost within like 20 seconds. I can tell that there's something in this food that my body's not responding to, and it acts like a poison in my body. So I get all kind of disruptions in my digestive system, and it's just not fun. And
Right.
switching to organic, I stopped experiencing that. So I was like, okay, well, there must be something in this that my body just can't handle.
Sure.
And being 100% organic can be challenging, but the beauty of being plant-based is it's actually less expensive.
Right. No doubt. No doubt. No, I get that. And I'm going to ask you this question. Do you grow your own?
I don't at this point. I would love to. I just don't really have the environment to do so right at the moment. I will hopefully in the future, though.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot. Where do you shop?
I shop at Trader Joe's.
I love
for
Trader
a few
Joe's.
things. I do too.
I love the service there, by the way. We keep talking about this workforce challenge that we have, and trust me, we all experience it in all the service-related places we go to, but not at Trader Joe's. I mean, I walk in and, I want to go find something. They're walking me back to the aisle. And they're not only showing me what I was looking for, but they're showing me about 3 or 4 other things.
Yes.
So I do love that about Trader Joe's. Keep going.
And then there's a Fry's right next door to me, so I end up going to Fry's most often.
Nice.
So it seems like that's my favorite store, but I'll end up at Sprouts every once in a while.
Well, I know that there's some wellness events that are coming up, and we're going to talk about those. But, at the same time, I want to, talk about, and maybe we can tee it up for the second segment, is really talk about older adults. And we got about a minute left, but I'm assuming that you've counseled and consulted with older adults and their diets. So We got about 30, 45 seconds. You got a tease for us for the second segment to keep people in, something you accomplished with somebody in terms of helping them with their health?
Absolutely. One of my favorite clients is my mom.
No
I'd
way.
love to talk about her, and I think she's listening today.
Okay, Mom. Well, you know what? Stephanie's going to be talking about you and talking to you about the wellness that she is doing relative to the fuel that we fuel our body with, and that is food. And we also want to talk about, how to hydrate your body as well, for sure. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and we've got Stephanie Bucklin in the studio. We're talking wellness. Stick around. We got 3 more segments. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, I got Stephanie Bucklin here in the studio. She's got a company called Stephanie Bucklin Consulting, LLC. If you want to find out more about her, go to stephaniebucklin.com, and that is Stephanie, STEPHANIE, Bucklin, BUCKLIN.com. And if you missed our first segment, you can catch it up on our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button. Third button down is radio show. You can catch this first segment and many more. So, Stephanie, we teed up this segment talking about mom, because I want to really to talk about, as we were talking about a plant-based diet and what it means to you to be healthy and eating all the right stuff, if you would. I wanted to give our listeners an indication of what this does for people. And we'll put Mom on the spot. Mom have a first name?
Mary.
Mary. Hi, Mary. I'm sure you're listening. So go ahead. Be kind to Mom, and let's hear what you've done for Mom.
Well, when I created my business in 2011, I wanted to help people. And my first goal was to create this beautiful optimal wellness program. It was a 12-week program, and it took people through plant-based nutrition, how to cleanse, how to do juicing, all these beautiful techniques. And then I needed some guinea pigs. So I was like, hey, Mom and Dad, do you want to go through my program? So we were living in different states at that point. And so we do this via Zoom. And every week.
Did Dad sign up too?
Dad signed up too.
Wow.
Yep. Every week, Mom and Dad would come onto Zoom, and we would go through that segment of the program. And that first part, when we started talking about plant-based nutrition, my mom was like, I have always thought that I should eat more plants and more nutrition. Yes, I'm going to try this. She also tried to get my dad engaged, but he was a little more interested in the meat. Didn't really like the whole plant-based idea.
Right.
But what can you do? Can't help everybody, right? So when Mom transitioned to a plant-based diet, though, she actually was able to help her body. She lost weight. She was way more hydrated. She had more energy, and she was really more youthful than she had been in years. It made such a huge impact on her that she's stuck with it. She's still plant-based to this day.
Wow. And that's been how long now?
Since 2012, so
wow,
10 years.
And does that cause a challenge? Because this is really good for our listeners to hear this. So her partner, your dad, doesn't keep a plant-based diet. So obviously he still likes his meat. Yeah. So how do you manage through that? Or how does Mom? I wish Mom was here on the show. She could probably tell us. But how do couples, how are they able to manage through that when one is doing a plant-based diet?
That's a really good question. Actually, my dad passed away in 2015.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he really didn't want to change, and ultimately heart disease took him.
I'm so sorry.
But I think the biggest challenge between Mom and Dad was Dad really just wanted his meat. And so what she would do is just adapt. So she would make her plant-based food, and then he would come into the kitchen and make his meat.
Got it.
So it worked out that way because he was really good at making whatever meat-based dish he wanted.
Yeah, and he's probably really good on the grill. So he was probably grilling it and doing all the things that people do with the various meats. No, I so appreciate you sharing that. And you talked about it in the first segment how plant-based diet, there's data and there's proof that it really helps and reverse a lot of illnesses. And you talked about diabetes and you talked about heart disease. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
That was the reason I wanted to bring my mom and dad into my program because I had already found that research that plant-based foods could heal the body, remove the disease. And dad had diabetes and heart disease and all kinds of other issues attached to metabolic syndrome.
Sure.
That's ultimately what took his life. But when we were talking about plant-based foods, he realized that there was a lot of foods that he just didn't like or didn't want to bring into his diet. He just wasn't interested in eating a salad every day. Wasn't into do I really have to eat greens every single day? So love my dad, but
I get it, and there are people that are set in their ways, and I've talked about my father here on the show. He's actually been here on the show, and he's 86 years old, and he still lives the same type of diet that your dad lived, and he's not going to change. And he's just like, I'm here at 86, and I want my meat. And he likes having a good steak. Or, Dad, I don't know if you're listening, but Fleming's Tomahawk Tuesdays are his favorite, so he likes to go down to Fleming's and certainly get that tomahawk. So that doesn't he hasn't changed, and certainly checks a lot of boxes as it relates to comorbidities. But I want to go back to you, Stephanie, and I want to read your mission statement for our listeners because I think it really encapsulates the work that you do, and that is to offer visionary guidance and healing inspiration with truth about love. And love is capitalized, so we can talk a little bit more about that. To awaken humanity and raise consciousness, inspire sustainable holistic lifestyles, and global peace through radical loving kindness, and that is in caps too, and intuitive guidance, healing our humanity with experiential education events, evidence-based knowledge, that's caps, and verified truth in media. There's a whole lot there that we could unpack, but I do want to spend a lot of time here today really talking about the educational events because I know you got some of those coming up. But I also want to just reference your tagline, which I think is really, really poignant, and that is, we are fighting for love and healing the world one human at a time. I love that about you, and I imagine this isn't something that you just whipped out of thin air. So, I always like to ask our guests, how did you really come up with your mission statement? Because it's something that you've probably worked on over a long time.
Absolutely. I am a heart-centered practitioner. Everything that I do is with love. I call myself a love warrior, and if you find me on social media, all of my social medias are number one, love warrior, because I'm fighting for love. It made so much sense to me to just bring love into every single conversation.
Right. It's so true. And your love of food that fuels your body in the right way. That seems to be something that resonates about you. And we haven't really talked about beverages. Are you strictly a water person, or do you, kombucha or kombucha, however you pronounce it? I mean, what are some of the things you recommend in terms of the beverages?
I am a fan of kombucha. The reason it's because it's full of probiotics, which our bodies really need.
Right.
Some people can't handle the flavor of kombucha, but I do recommend trying all of them. There's about 50 of them if you go to a conventional grocery store.
Right.
So many different flavors to choose from. The ones that I find most palatable are the apple ones.
Nice. All right, so we're getting ready to wind down our second segment. I like to tease for the second half, so let's tease a little bit and really talk about the Integrative Wellness Expo and Conference that you have coming up. So Tell me about the origin of this. Is this your first conference? Have you done many of these in the past?
This is actually my 10th health fair.
Okay.
And first one here in Phoenix.
Nice.
So it's an opportunity now to introduce the practitioners to the community and the community to these healing practices that actually help us heal.
You said practitioners, so plural. There's more than you.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
We actually have 120 so far. Individuals, businesses, and practitioners that are all coming to this event to help serve the community.
All right. And where is this event and when?
It's going to be at Brooks Community Center, which is off of 32nd and Broadway in Phoenix. And it's the 25th through 27th. Friday night is a music event. I invite you all to come out, listen to some really cool vibe music. Saturday and Sunday, you'll find all of those practitioners.
So, music, can you tell us who's playing?
Absolutely. Band named Entheo out of Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
They're going to be doing an acoustic set. Then we have DJ Ascension and DJ Carmen Ray, who will be doing more of electronic kind of music. Then we have Colleen Porter doing a sound healing and a drum circle right at the end.
Wow. Very, very cool. So for our listeners, that's 32nd Street and Broadway. The address is 3146 East Weir, W-I-E-R Avenue in Phoenix. How do we learn more about this?
If you go to my website, stephaniebucklin.com, click on the Integrative Wellness Expo menu item, there's all kinds of details on how to get involved, how to join, where to buy tickets, all that yummy stuff.
Well, perfect. You know, we're coming up here on halftime, and, you know, I really so much appreciate you sharing the story about your mom. And Mary, hello. Great to meet you, and better to meet your daughter. But I do love storytelling, so I want to really focus on the second half. Tell us a little bit more about some of the work that you're doing, the healing that you're doing, and the love that you are spreading. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. It's halftime here at Health Futures. I got Stephanie Bucklin in the studio. Stick around. We got 2 more segments. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and we're in our second half here. And if you're just tuning in, I got Stephanie Bucklin in the studio. She has a little company called Stephanie Bucklin Consulting. She does consulting services, event planning, and production, and she is putting on this wellness event where there's going to be like 112 practitioners. I mean, that's big. What kind of turnout are you guys expecting?
We are really hoping for the best. Hopefully about 500 people over the weekend.
Nice. And for our listeners, you know, I know Stephanie had shared this. The event is Friday through Sunday, Friday, March 25th through Sunday, April 3rd. They are hosting in person March 25th to the 27th. The dates after are virtual, but if you want to learn more, you want to go to stephaniebucklin.com. But just so you know, and you have it in your calendar, it is at 32nd Street and Broadway, specifically 3146 East Weir Avenue in Phoenix. So Stephanie, you know, you shared in the first half about the success and how helpful you were with your mom. And certainly, you know, my wife is big time wanting to do plant, and she does very little meat. Pescatarian, she likes fish. Definitely, you know, does that and chicken. But, you know, certainly there's so many benefits to doing just a plant-based diet. And you know, look, you know, we see all these, like, what is it? The burgers, the ones that are, what do they call them? That
Beyond
are
Burgers?
The Beyond Burgers and
Yep.
stuff like that. Is that something you do take part in?
I do every once in a while, yeah.
Yeah, and even the fast foods have them. You know, it's crazy, but they have them. And truly, I do have to ask you, are they healthy?
Well, to a point. What they say in plant-based nutrition is that a lot of the vegan meats are a transition food. More like eat that food until you're ready to completely transition to whole food plant-based, and then you drop the processed meats because they are full of chemicals and they aren't super healthy for you.
Well, that's how they put it all together, right? To get it to stick, because
Yep.
otherwise it's pretty hard to. No, but I will tell you that, my stepmother, who's no longer with us, but when she was, I mean, it looked like a burger, and you bit into it, and I know they used, the colors from some of the fruits, the reds and stuff like that, to really make it look like it was a burger. So I do want to talk about the healing stuff that you're doing, and healing is just so important, and healing is done through food and love, as you put it.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have love for food, and how do you get people to love this type of food? And I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, it's all about feeling good. And my wife Susie always talks about, like, we'll pick on my dad. Imagine if he ate plant-based diet, how good he would feel, because you eat all these meats, it certainly takes its toll on you. So I'd like you to talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I think one introduction that you can give people is with juicing. So get a really good juicer, or you can even buy pre-made juices from like
Whole
Foods.
Yeah, they got a whole section there.
And that is a freshly juiced fruit, vegetable, or mixture of those two things.
Mm-hmm.
Super cleansing. Just incorporate a couple of juices every day for about a week. You will see a huge difference. How you feel, your energy, quality of your vision, and your brain function. It's amazing the difference it can make.
And for you, I mean, tell us a little bit about your story, because I can't imagine you were always living on a plant-based diet. And what did it do for you when you went through that experience? Because obviously that's relational, and you can tell people about that.
Definitely. I discovered plant-based nutrition from a couple of movies that I watched. Back then, it was Food Inc. And then later on, Cowspiracy. These amazing documentaries that just kind of changed my perspective on how food works in the body and what it can do for us. So I attempted at first to just cut out processed foods. Then I started to cut out the meats, and then I cut out fish and cheese, and it just very slowly but surely, it took me about a year to make the full transition. Once I got to the whole food plant-based diet, I ended up losing over 100 pounds.
What?
My body was thriving with
Wow.
that diet.
Wow. And even to this day, I mean, when you wake up, do you wake up, with clarity, mental clarity, physical clarity? You feel really good.
Definitely. And, incorporating love into everything that I do.
Mhm.
A lot of what I use is gratitude, forgiveness, being more conscious and mindful of my own energy and what I'm putting out in the world. That makes a difference to how I wake up.
So you do a lot of these individual services, and it's up here on your website, and I want to talk a little bit about them. Holistic Lifestyle Coaching, Optimal Wellness Program 2.0, not 1.0. Intuitive Reiki, is that how you say
Reiki.
it? Reiki energy healing. Private Hatha yoga sessions, and Detox My Life cleansing for your home, office, or car. Can you talk a little bit about each one of those?
Sure. So the holistic lifestyle coaching is a one-on-one coaching opportunity where people can work directly with me, either online or in person. I'm totally online now, which is super exciting.
Sure.
The Optimal Wellness Program is that same 12-week program that I started out in 2012 with my mom, has developed over time and become an online program, still 12 weeks long, but can be extended all the way to a year.
Wow. Very cool. And you can do that online or in person as well.
Absolutely. The Reiki practice, I became a Reiki practitioner in 2015. And the reason I discovered it was because I realized that there was more to what I could see. I could feel energy. And it made such a difference becoming Reiki attuned. It was all of a sudden I can do more with that energy than I ever was before. So Reiki is really powerful if you're feeling a lot of stress and anxiety. It's also being used for a lot of other reasons. So you'll find Reiki practitioners in cancer centers. You'll find Reiki practitioners in doctor's offices. A lot of nurses have become Reiki practitioners to add that to their nursing skills.
Can you just give me and our listeners, 30 seconds or less, what exactly is Reiki? Is it massage therapy, or, tell us a little bit about that. And I really want to understand, is it energy that you're getting from the person that you're working with, or is it energy that's being released by you?
Reiki is an energy practice, so it's not massage. When I have a Reiki client, they lay on a massage table and my hands are about 6 inches above their body. I'm working within the energy field, and so if you study anything about quantum physics or science, we are energy. We're made of energy. And we have these different layers of energy fields that go out from our physical being. And in those energy fields, sometimes things get stuck. Emotional traumas, physical traumas, things like toxins that end up in our bodies, things get stuck in the energy field and then cause disease later. So what Reiki does is helps to align the body, remove some of those emotional traumas. It helps to remove stress, anxiety, depression even. There are so many beautiful studies about Reiki and what it can do for your body.
So trying to visualize this. So if I were on that table, there's no touch.
Very little.
Very little touch. And, I'm on my stomach, my back. I mean, I want for visualization. I would love for you to describe that. We have like less than a minute, but I would love for, and then when we come back, I want to talk about the yoga and detoxing your life.
Definitely. So Reiki energy is pulled from the universal energy. And so the best way that I can connect it to spiritual energy is it's like God's love that I'm basically a conduit for. So I bring in the energy from out in the universe, bring it into my body, and then transmit it through my hands, which sounds like woo-woo, but
Right.
There is actually some science showing that energy moves.
And like you said, I mean, there are practitioners that are doing this in doctors' practices and oncology and stuff like that. So very, very cool. Well, I got to tell you, I'm learning a great deal. Sounds like we got maybe a little who taking us out. When we come back, I want to talk about the Hatha yoga session. I also want to talk about detoxing my life and cleansing that you could do at the home, office, or car. Very interesting. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I got Stephanie Bucklin here in the studio. We've got one more segment. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and we're on our fourth segment. I've got Stephanie Bucklin here in the studio. She has a company that is called Stephanie Bucklin Consulting. Not only do they do consulting services, they do event planning and production, and she's a healer, a big-time healer. And we were talking about some of the things that she does, her individualized services, and we walked through the 5 primary ones there are, and we talked about holistic life coaching, and she talked about how, her mom's a great example of what she's done, and kudos to you. It sounds like mom's on a good path. We talked about the Optimal Wellness Program 2.0, and we talked about intuitive Reiki. How do we say it right? Reiki energy healing, and what that means. And I will tell you, I learned a lot. Hopefully you, our listeners, learned a lot about that. So I want to talk about private Hatha yoga session now. And the other one is detoxing. But I want to talk about the private Hatha yoga session because I practice yoga. But what is Hatha? And what, tell me a little bit about what you're doing for people.
Well, I kind of consider myself a yoga purist. The way that yoga is taught in the United States is a little bit messed up. It's just not the original yoga practice. There's things that we do here in the United States we've done like goat yoga or drink beer yoga. Like, why are we doing this? This is not yoga.
No, it's not.
So hatha yoga, it's just to indicate that it's the authentic yoga practice.
The authentic yoga. Okay. And you do this in people's homes. You take them through it. Do you do some of that virtually?
I can. I haven't yet.
Okay.
But I do have the ability to do a yoga class through Zoom.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about detoxing, because you talked about juicing, and juicing is a big part of it. And obviously, a lot of people, at least I think of when you're doing juicing, sometimes it incorporates detoxing and getting all the stuff out of you. Drinking, these funky things to help eliminate all that stuff. So can you jump into that and really talk about home, office, and car?
Yeah.
How do you detox in your car?
Well, like I said before, there are toxins everywhere. And I have a presentation that I created that is actually based on a book that I've been writing called The Art of Balance in a World of Chaos. The presentation is called Avoiding Toxins in Your Food and Environment. So I'll take people through this talk. It's about 2 hours long. There's a lot of toxins. So after you've received that information, you're like, now what? I look at my house and there's toxins everywhere.
Yeah.
So I'll come into the house and we'll do a deep dive in every cupboard, every cabinet, every corner. Look for all of those toxins. And in that process, I'll educate you on what is toxic. Why is it toxic? What's in there that's actually making it toxic? A really great example.
Thank you.
Most people don't know the most toxic thing in their house is dryer sheets.
No way.
One of the most toxic other things in your house, air fresheners. So these things that we think are making our clothing smell good, making our air smell good, are actually carrying cancer-causing agents.
Dryer sheets. Wow. Okay. Well, there goes the dryer sheets. And
there are alternatives.
All right. Well, let's hear it. What are some of the alternatives?
Some people will take a washcloth and put some essential oils on the washcloth.
Okay.
To bring a little bit of a cleansing scent to the laundry. Other people will use wool balls, which you can get at Trader Joe's.
Wool balls.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Takes the electricity out of the clothes.
Interesting. No, I love hearing all this, and you've been doing this a long time, and certainly I want to give a plug again for this upcoming event. So this event is an integrative wellness expo and conference. It's hybrid, so part of it's in person and the other part is virtual. It is hosted Friday, March 25th, so that would be 2 weeks from today, through Sunday, April 3rd. Now, the in-person event is going to be March 25th through the 27th. You can find out more about this on your website, but it's at the Brooks Community Center located near 32nd Street and Broadway, and that's 3146 East Weir Avenue. What are the hours of the in-person?
Friday is an evening event. It's 4 to 8.
Okay.
Saturday and Sunday. Saturday is 10 to 6. Sunday is 9 to 4.
And you talked about live music. Is live music at all three, Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Maybe.
Okay.
I'm working on getting a DJ to play for us for Saturday and Sunday.
Okay, well, fantastic. So as we get ready to wind down the show, I typically like to ask my listeners, or my guests for my listeners, what questions have I not asked? What, lasting thoughts do you want to leave with our listeners as we get ready to close the show?
Well, I think the beautiful things that you can participate in if you come down to this Integrative Wellness Expo, I think that's probably what I would love to close with.
Right.
We have some free workshops about nutrition, cleansing, community yoga classes for gentle movement. We've got a wellness clinic with massage therapists and Reiki practitioners to offer those healing techniques for you.
Nice.
And even some sound healers that are going to heal you with vibrations.
Wow, that's really cool. Now, and we're really getting into the best days of living here in the Valley, and I would imagine that you are encouraging people to get out, and especially right now. I mean, the skies are clear. There's not a whole lot of pollution, and just breathing the air and enjoying the sunshine.
Definitely. This is a great time for hiking.
Great time for hiking. And some of the things that you're doing, especially like yoga and some of these other practices, you can do outside, right?
Absolutely. There are even, if you look on Meetup, you'll find some yoga classes online.
What is
Or in person, rather.
what is Meetup?
Meetup.com. It's an app and a website where you can find different social activities.
Oh, wow. Okay, and you can zero in to certain geos like this one here.
Exactly.
Well, fantastic. I will tell you, Stephanie, it's been great having you here on the show and really talking about wellness, talking about love. And I mean, we are just getting bombarded by such really bad news. First, not first, but most recently dealing with COVID and all the loss that everyone's dealt with around that, whether it be loss of job, loss of income, loss of loved ones, you name it, they've lost. And now we're seeing all this carnage that's happening across the world over in Ukraine. And, I think we all need a little bit more love. And you have inspired me and have brought a lot of love to our studio and hopefully a lot of love to our listeners. So thank you, Stephanie, for joining us here today. You've been listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. We are on every single Friday. We are talking about health and we're talking about wellness. We are talking about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. I've got a great show lined up for next Friday. I've got Dr. Michael Gordon here on the show. So please tune in, listen for next Friday. You make it a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next week.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress Home Care Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit cypresshomecare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3.